Israel punishes officers in death of Palestinian-American. The Israeli military says it will reprimand a senior officer and remove 2 others from leadership roles over the death of a 78-year-old Palestinian with U.S. citizenship. 322. Jerusalem. The Israeli military said Tuesday it would reprimand a senior officer and remove 2 others from leadership roles over the death of a 78-year-old Palestinian who was dragged from a car, bound and blindfolded after being stopped at a checkpoint. It said the soldiers believed Omar Assad, who has U.S. citizenship, was asleep when they cut his zip ties and left him face down in an abandoned building, where he had been detained with 3 other Palestinians last month. The other detainees said they did not know he was there until after the army left. It's unclear when exactly Assad died. He was taken to a hospital and pronounced dead after the other detainees found him unconscious. The investigation concluded that the incident was a grave and unfortunate event, resulting from a moral failure and poor decision-making on the part of the soldiers, the military said in a statement. A separate criminal investigation by the military police is still underway. Assad had extended family living in the United States. The State Department had expressed concern over his death and called for an investigation. 2 members of Wisconsin's congressional delegation called on the Biden administration to investigate. The Israeli military says it thoroughly investigates such incidents. But rights groups say Israel rarely holds soldiers accountable for the deaths of Palestinians. Even in the most shocking cases, and those captured on video, soldiers often get relatively light sentences. Palestinians say they suffer systematic mistreatment, living under military occupation. A Palestinian autopsy said Assad died of a heart attack, caused by psychological tension due to the external violence he was exposed to. It said he suffered from underlying health conditions but also found bruises on his head, redness on his wrists from being bound, and bleeding in his eyelids from being tightly. Assad was stopped at around 3 a.m. on January 12 at a temporary checkpoint in his home village of Jiljilia, in the occupied West Bank. The military said he did not have any form of ID and refused to cooperate with the security check. Its investigation found there was no use of violence, apart from when Assad was apprehended after refusing to cooperate. It said the soldiers did not identify signs of distress when they released the detainees a half-hour later. They assumed that Assad was asleep and did not try to wake him. The military said the commander of the battalion will be reprimanded and that the platoon commander and company commander will both be removed from their positions and barred from commanding roles for 2 years. A cousin of Assad who lives in the West Bank said the army's response was totally unacceptable but that there was nothing the family could do unless Assad's relatives in the U.S. take further action. The cousin asked not to be identified for fear of reprisal. Israeli human rights group BT Selam said the army's statement was adorned with empty words, and that the soldiers involved received the faintest of rebukes. It criticized senior Israeli commanders for leading a regime of Jewish supremacy, one in which the human life of Palestinians has no value. Assad was born in Jiljilia but spent about 40 years in the United States. He became a U.S. citizen before he returned to his home village in 2009 to retire. With his wife, Nazmia, his family in the U.S. told the Associated Press. They spoke before the military released its findings. Israel captured the West Bank in the 1967 Mideast War. The Palestinian Authority administers parts of the territory, but its 2.5 million residents live under Israeli military rule. Israeli soldiers often carry out nighttime raids, which they say are necessary for arresting Palestinian militants, and set up temporary checkpoints where Palestinians are stopped and searched. Assad's nephew, Assad, said his uncle and aunt left Jiljilia for Chicago in 1969 in hopes of finding better work. They moved to Milwaukee in 1974 and prospered, opening convenience stores and a restaurant, he said. Their last name is spelled different ways in English. They were among dozens of Jiljilia residents who have returned to the village over the years to build retirement homes, Assad said. They built mini castles to retire in, he said. Very quiet, all you see is olive trees. At night, because we're high in the mountains, you smell the orchards of oranges. Omar's nephew and his son, Hain Assad, both described him as a philanthropist who was the life of the party. Hain Assad told the AP his father would often hand out money to the poor. He just loved everybody, no matter what race you were, what culture you came from, he said. He just saw you as a human being. His favorite dish was makluba, a mix of rice and meat, and he loved playing cards, Assad said. He was coming home from playing cards with a cousin when the soldiers stopped him, he said. Hain Assad said his mother and father were set to visit him at his home in Chesapeake, Virginia, before his father died. Assad said his father was too old and weak to fight anyone, let alone a group of soldiers. He was very weak, Hain Assad said. He walked with a cane. It takes him 5 minutes to get to the car, the way he walks. He doesn't have the power of 30 soldiers. The military said, we left and he was fine. It doesn't make sense. Assad said he's always afraid when he returns to Jiljilia because the Israelis who operate the checkpoints are rude and disrespectful. He said he was once detained for 4 hours on the way to his grandmother's funeral. The troops laugh at his American citizenship, he said. Every time we got stopped, Dad would say, whatever they ask for, give it to them. Just be calm. Plenty of times we got pulled over and I never saw him fight, Hain Assad said. I can't believe they did that to my dad. Almost an 80-year-old man. All the soldiers there couldn't handle him? This is uncalled for. You don't treat no elderly person like that. Associated Press writer Todd Richmond in Madison, Wisconsin, contributed to this report.